A Japanese underground idol recently let fans smell her armpits at a meet and greet event, and one fan, a middle-aged man, got down on all fours and mimicked a puppy before leaning in. Afterward, he posted online, "The reason I was born was to meet Hari. I love you." I genuinely don't know where to start with that sentence. But I know it's not an isolated incident. I know it's not even particularly shocking by the standards of what goes on in Japan's idol industry on a regular basis. And that is exactly the problem I want to talk about today. Because what you just heard is not a glitch in the system. It is the system working exactly as designed. And once I walk you through how deep this goes, from the business model that was engineered to make fans spend everything they have, to the contracts that legally strip these young women of their private lives, to the violence that this culture has produced on multiple occasions, you are going to look at J-pop very differently. But before I get into what's happening right now with underground idols, I need to show you something that happened at a mainstream AKB48 fan event a few years ago, because it is the clearest possible example of where this whole thing starts to fall apart. And understanding that is what makes everything else in this video make sense. So let's start at the beginning, because the Western understanding of Japanese idol culture is usually about 20 years behind what's actually happening. J-pop idols are not the same as K-pop idols, even though K-pop borrowed a lot of its structure from Japan in the first place. The difference is in what the industry is actually selling. In K-pop, the product is aspiration. The idol is polished, flawless, untouchable. You admire them from a distance that the label carefully controls. In J-pop, the product is something else entirely. The product is proximity. The product is intimacy. The product is the feeling that this person exists specifically for you. The phrase that launched AKB48, Japan's biggest idol group, was not experience their talent or discover their music. It was idols you can meet. That was the entire pitch. A 200-seat theater in Akihabara where the same fans could come back every single night, watch the same performances, and be close to the same girls again and again. And that word, close, is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Because the closeness was never just about geography. AKB48's business model, which became the template for the entire modern J-pop idol industry, works like this. You buy a CD. Inside the CD is a ticket. The ticket gets you into a handshake event. At the handshake event, you get roughly 10 seconds with one member of your choice. She looks you in the eye, she thanks you for coming, she squeezes your hand. Security moves you along. That's it. Now here's the part that completely loses me every time I think about it. Fans buy multiple copies of the same CD. Not 2 copies, not 5 copies. We are talking about a man who bought 1,300 copies of the same AKB48 single in 2016, spending around $16,000 to get enough votes in an in-group popularity contest to influence which member got more screen time in the next music video. His candidate came in 7th place. The day after one AKB48 single release, bins across Japanese cities were photographed filled with discarded CDs. The discs went straight in the trash. Fans had extracted the voting slips from inside the packaging and thrown away the actual music without ever listening to it. Now, before I get into the violence, I need you to understand what kind of relationship these agencies build with their idols. Because the armpit situation and the fan obsession and everything else we're going to talk about today does not happen by accident. It is the direct result of a very specific contract structure that has been normalized in Japan for decades. Most girls entering the idol system are teenagers. Many contracts include dating bans or celibacy clauses, designed to preserve the fantasy that idols are romantically available. In 2015, a Tokyo court even ruled against a 17-year-old idol, fining her after she was accused of violating one of these clauses. The court found her guilty and fined her the equivalent of roughly $5,400. The incident that triggered the lawsuit? She had been seen entering a hotel with 2 men when she was 15 years old. And a court decided she owed her management company money for what she was doing in her private life. You are legally permitted to have feelings. You are not legally permitted to act on them. The reason these contracts exist is not complicated. These agencies are not selling music to music fans. They are selling an emotional fantasy to a very specific category of devotee. And part of that fantasy is the idea that the idol is, in some sense, available. Not in a romantic reality, but in a parasocial possibility. The moment she has a boyfriend, the fantasy has a competitor, and the competitor wins. A weather presenter in Japan, completely separate from the idol industry, was briefly seen with a boyfriend, and her employer's stock dropped 10% in a single day. 10% from a weather presenter having a romantic life. That is how deeply this runs. So now let's talk about who fills those theaters and handshake event venues, because this is the part the J-pop industry would very much prefer you not look at directly. The documentary Tokyo Idols highlighted something critics have pointed out for years. Audiences at many idol events are overwhelmingly adult men, while many performers are teenagers. The industry isn't simply selling music. It monetizes emotional attachment through repeated fan interactions, encouraging some fans to build their lives around a single idol. So here's where I need to tell you about Mayu Tomita. And I want you to hold that name for a moment because her story is the clearest possible example of where this culture ends when no one intervenes. We are going to come back to her. But first, the AKB48 handshake event, May 25th, 2014. Rina Kawai, 19, and Anna Iriyama, 18, two members of AKB48, are standing inside handshake booths at a fan event in Iwate Prefecture. A fan reaches the front of the queue. He pulls out a handsaw. He attacks both of them. Rina suffered broken bones in her right hand and cuts to her head. Anna sustained cuts on her arm. A staff member who grabbed the weapon barehanded was also injured. This happened at a handshake event. The structure the entire business model was built on. The intimate, accessible, you-can-meet-your-idol environment that made AKB48 a global phenomenon. A fan brought a weapon to it. And even after that attack, even after the industry looked at what the proximity economy had produced, the handshake events continued, because the revenue that comes from them is simply too significant to stop. AKB48 at its peak was accounting for a meaningful percentage of Japan's entire physical music market, which in 2012 was a $4.3 billion industry. You don't restructure that over an assault. You add a metal detector and move on. Now, Mayu Tomita. In 2016, Tomita was a working J-pop idol. She had been receiving hundreds of messages on social media from a fan named Tomohiro Iwazaki. He had proposed marriage. She rejected him. She returned his gifts, including a watch and books he had sent her. He sent 140 comments, including death threats. She reported this to the police. Police issued warnings to him. He ignored them. On May 21, 2016, Tomita was outside a performance venue preparing for a concert. Iwazaki came up behind her and stabbed her 61 times. 61. She survived. She has lived with partial vision loss and post-traumatic stress disorder ever since. She sued the Tokyo Metropolitan Government for failing to adequately protect her after she reported the threats. She said the anti-stalking laws in Japan were not effectively enforced, and the police response to her repeated warnings was insufficient. And she was right, because this was not the first time something like this had happened. It was not even rare. Reports of idols being stalked by obsessed fans are so common in Japan that journalists describe them as distressingly frequent. The idol industry created a machine for generating devotion and built almost no infrastructure for managing what devotion produces when it curdles. Okay, so that is the mainstream. A KB48 with 48 members, theater venues, national handshake events, merchandise empires, government scrutiny over sales practices. Now let's talk about what happens at the bottom of the pyramid, because this is where Hari Matsumoto comes in, and this is where the armpit story makes complete and total sense, even as it stays completely bizarre. About 80% of Japanese idols operate in the underground scene, not on television, not in magazine ads, not on national tours. They perform in small venues called live houses and shopping center halls to audiences of sometimes dozens of people. The financial reality is brutal. Average monthly income for an underground idol is around 120,000 yen, which is roughly $800 a month. Some make significantly less. In that environment, standing out is existential. Not standing out means the venue stops booking you. It means the fans who do come stop coming. It means you disappear. So underground idols do things mainstream idols cannot, because underground idols have nothing to lose and everything to gain from going viral, even for the wrong reasons. Underground idol Hari Matsumoto went viral after allowing fans to smell her armpits during meet and greets. In one clip, a middle-aged man dropped to his knees and mimicked a puppy before leaning in. The internet immediately exploded. One fan posted that her scent was amazing. Another posted that he felt like he was born to meet her. Some fans signed what were described as loyalty contracts, pledging financial support and exclusive devotion in exchange for access. The online reaction was split in a way that I find genuinely revealing about this industry. Critics called it inappropriate, said it crossed obvious lines, said it felt like something adjacent to adult entertainment dressed up as idol culture. And the defenders are technically correct. It was consensual between adults. Matsumoto has not explained her reasoning publicly, but she doesn't need to. Her name is everywhere. In an industry where obscurity is the default, attention is the entire currency. She has it now. But here's the question I keep coming back to. What does it tell you about a system that an independent performer making $800 a month has arrived at this as a reasonable career strategy? What kind of industry creates conditions where this is the logical next step for someone trying to survive in it? That is not a question about Matsumoto. That is a question about the industry she's operating in. I want to take a step back from the specific incidents for a minute, because individually, the AKB48 attack, the Tomita stabbing, the armpit story, the fan who spent $16,000 on CDs, these can all be filed away as extreme cases, outliers, things that happen in every industry at the fringes. But they're not outliers. Rather, they are the predictable output of a very deliberate design. Japan's idol industry was constructed around one core psychological mechanism: Parasocial intimacy. The manufactured feeling that an idol exists in relationship with you specifically, not with the crowd, with you. The handshake is 10 seconds long, but the industry spends enormous resources making those 10 seconds feel like they mean something deeper. The voting system makes fans feel like they have a stake in the idol's trajectory. The graduation ceremonies, where members age out of groups, are framed as personal losses that the fan community mourns together. Everything, every fan event, every merchandise release, every proximity event, is engineered to deepen the sense that this is a relationship. And relationships, when they exist only in one person's head, are capable of producing outcomes that real relationships are not. A Japanese cultural critic observed in a documentary that the obsession with these young girls, who are simultaneously presented as innocent and as intimately available, has stopped being fringe behavior in Japan. It has become, in parts of Japanese society, a normalized mode of engaging with female entertainers. The Wota culture that once existed on the cultural periphery has broken into the mainstream, and mainstream acceptance of that culture has not made it less extreme. It has given the extreme behavior more social cover. The connection to Japan's broader cultural relationship with animated fantasy, where the idea of a perfect, devoted, accessible female figure who exists purely to please is a genre staple, is real and it is uncomfortable to discuss. Not because the genre is inherently harmful, but because when that fantasy aesthetic migrates wholesale into the treatment of real human beings, you get AKB48. You get loyalty contracts. You get a 17-year-old being fined by a court for breaching a celibacy clause. You get Mayu Tomita being stabbed 61 times in a venue parking lot. The connection is not a coincidence. It is a pipeline. I'm not telling you J-pop is evil. I'm not telling you that anyone who enjoys idol music is complicit in something terrible. That's not the argument. The underground idol scene is now reportedly spreading. Cities in Shanghai and Hong Kong are developing similar cultures, built around the same proximity economy model, the same fan devotion mechanics, the same financial pressure on performers to escalate their fan service to survive. It is expanding. And nobody with the power to regulate it is particularly interested in doing so, because the economics work. When the revenue model depends on turning devotion into spending, and when the product being sold is the feeling of intimacy with a person, rather than the music they make, the question of where the line is becomes very hard to answer. Because the whole business is built on the idea that there should not be a line, the more the fan feels, the more they spend. So every incentive points in the same direction. And that is how you end up with a middle-aged man on his knees in a small venue in Japan, mimicking a puppy, posting afterward that the reason he was born was to meet her. He did not arrive at that moment randomly. He was guided there, slowly, by a system that knew exactly what it was doing. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you're new.